Hello there, my name is Dr. Saleem Javed. I am an associate professor at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication at Lingia's Lalita Devi Institute of Management and Sciences, and we have been talking about cinema. But today is a very interesting day where we are going to deviate from our routine topics, and today onwards we are going to talk about how to master communication and critical thinking. I mean, I have been receiving quite a lot of requests that Saleem sir, why don't you come up with few lectures on mastering communication and critical thinking. So here is about now mastering communication and critical thinking, and I have named the topic as the architecture of thought. Now, during this lecture, we will talk about the science of communication, understanding critical thinking, the stages of critical thinking, barriers to clear thinking, why we struggle, scientific strategies for success, and then we will talk about uncovering hidden barriers, and we will also talk about the psychology of success. Now, very interesting thing to begin with, that everybody says that why do we need to improve our communication skills? Everybody says that, I mean, when we go and talk to people, everybody says that you need to improve your communication skills. Nobody says that you need to improve your conversation skills. So there must be some difference between talking and communication. So that is what exactly we are going to find out today, that what is called communication and what is conversation, what is the difference between communication and conversation. Now, as you can see on your screen, it says what is communication. Now, there is a beautiful, very what can I say, a very common definition of communication, which can be used academically also and which can be used in day-to-day normal life also. Now, it says that communication is the process of sending, transmitting or decoding information between a sender and a receiver. Now, when you say there is a sender and a receiver, and it is not only the mere transfer of information, it is a meaning making process which involves verbal and non-verbal channels across different channels. So when it comes to communication, now in communication you have got a sender, you have got a receiver, but you can say, Saleem sir, sender and receiver is there in conversation also. Absolutely, I mean, up till this point they are the same, and it is the language which is being used in talking and communication. Now, the basic difference, that when you say that I am having a conversation, conversation also has got words, conversation also has got some intended meaning, pun, the way of saying, delivery and everything. But when it comes to communication, which is slightly different from conversation. Now, a good communication, or what do you call effective communication, requires not just sending information, which is exclusively part of conversation, but ensuring that the receiver understand the intended meaning. Now, the words intended meaning makes conversation communication. Now, what do we mean by intended meaning? Now, there is a beautiful way of understanding it, that what I am saying to you, if you are exactly understanding that, no left right in understanding the meaning, that I want to say that communication is this, and you are understanding that communication is this only. So the intended meaning that is with me is now with you. Now, there is where effective communication is happening. The moment you deviate, a slight deviation from this path, miscommunication happens. So nobody says misconversation happened. Everybody says miscommunication happened. because the intended meaning that I or the sender, you as a receiver, the mutual exchange between you and me, there is where exactly, if this intended meaning is not conveyed precisely, it is not communication, then it is miscommunication. That is what that is what the the power of intended meaning. Now, I give you another example for it. Now imagine that you are in a conversation. You are in a conversation, not communication. Now you are in a conversation with your friend, and the friend say you are in the middle of it, and suddenly your friend says, "How could you say that?" Now you did not mean that, but he or she understood something else, whereas your intended meaning, even in when there was a conversation, the intended meaning was not that. So now instead of conversation, you have a dispute. So the difference between conversation and communication is only two words in a general sense of, it is intended meaning. When you are having a conversation with a set, plan, or when you have some certain objectives in your mind, when you are having that conversation with, when you have certain objectives in your mind, it is communication. And when you are just talking and there is no intended meaning, and you don't have objectives, I mean, sometimes you say, you call your friends and you tell them, ki, why don't you come over, let's have some conversation, and it is absolutely, you haven't figured out what you're going to talk about, but you say, come over, we'll have a conversation, we'll have some conversation, let's have some good time. But when it comes to communication, communication is precisely objectified in advance, and there are some intended meaning which you want to draw from that particular meeting or from that particular event. So this is how. So even in communication, there are senders, receivers. There is some sort of an encoding. There is some sort of an decoding. That's why I am saying something. You are understanding something else. So I am encoding in it in a certain way, and you are decoding it in a certain way. So it happens. So first, let's. So this is the difference between what do you call conversation and communication. Now, as you can see it on your screen, there is a model which is being shown, which is called Shannon and Weaver model, and in this you have sender who is encoding the message, then you have a channel. This is how life works, by the way, and then you have a decoder, and then you have a receiver. Now, what does it mean? Like, suppose right now I am talking, so I am the sender, and I am encoding my message in English language. So the message is encoded in English language. CC is the channel right now, the medium through which you are watching this program. So channel is the CC. CC is sending signals that is being decoded by your television or your phone if you are watching it live, and then you are decoding what I am saying simultaneously. But the problem is that as I am talking to you, you cannot talk to me right now, and on the basis of this particular point, you have all the communication models designed in the world. So be that Aristotle or be that Dance's helix model, whatever it is either one way, two way, or mutual. So all the communication models which are being developed in the world are only based this, this, feedback, and then there is a loop that I can say something, then you can say something, you give me your feedback, then you say something and I give you your feedback. This is how it works. And by the way, this is how the conversation also works. You say something, your friend says something, and there are instant feedback that you are receiving on the spot. Now, a very interesting thing that comes in conversation, you know, you take it in day to day sense or you take it in technical sense also. Now, there is something called noise, N-O-I-S-E, noise. Now, as you can see on your screen, it says any factor, that interferes with message transmission. Now, this can be technical also and this can be you and I also, or reception, can occur at any stage. What are the stages? That I am the sender, encoding, channel, decoder, receiver and the decoder. So, it can occur at any stage and significantly impact communication quality. Now, this is called noise. Now, noise is like, suppose if this is a studio where we are recording and suddenly 5 people start talking, what would I say? I would say that please stop making the noise. Whereas they are having the conversation, they may have the conversation. But for me, it's a noise, because noise is anything which is interfering with the message transmission or reception. Now, suppose if weather is not good, your signals will get weak unless you have very good bandwidth. And or suppose if there is some problem, some electronic problem with your device, or maybe suppose your speaker is not proper, or maybe the bass has been increased by someone. So, all these things that I am talking about, they are called noise, and noise is something which can happen at any stage. It can happen at any stage. Entropy that I am talking about right now. Now, there are different channels through which we communicate. Now, suppose if suddenly I decide not to use words and I start talking like so it becomes only non-verbal communication. So verbal will have spoken words and written words. Non-verbal will have the body language, as I am using my hands right now. Then visuals will have image, graphics, and the PPT that I am using right now. And digital will have email, social media. So, these are the communication channels through which we communicate. Now, let us take an example of verbal communication. This is what verbal communication is happening right now. You and I'm talking, so there is a verbal communication. But suppose if I shrug my shoulders like this, so I am shrugging my shoulders like this, and a friend of yours asks you, what do you think about it? And you say something like this. So, you are communicating with your friend. There is no doubt about it, but that communication is a non-verbal communication, because you are not using word, you are using your body language. Now, visual is image or graphic and many more things. So, suppose if I say right now, as you can see your this particular slide, like if yeah, so this particular slide will, yes, this particular slide is an image technically, and if I use put some graphics, so that will be a visual communication. And if I send you an email or a social and I contact you through social media, so that will be a digital communication. Now, let us understand. Now, we have understood the difference between conversation and communication. Now, let us understand as I said that if I am the sender and you are the receiver, so this is a very linear model that I talk to you. Now, this is what I am doing right now. But when you understand communication deeply, because you want to improve your communication skills, I'll come to critical thinking just after a few points. So you need to understand what communication is. So communication is basically all the models, you know, all the models in the world which talk about communication work only on three formulas. What is number one formula? Something or any model will be a linear model, qualified as linear model. I'll be explaining it. Number two, they will be interactive models, or they will be transactional models. So, what is transactional, what is interactive, or what is linear model? Very simple understanding, when we became the student of communication, then we were asked to learn these models. But today I tell you this very interesting trick that you don't have to learn it, you just have to understand it. Now, what linear model says? Linear model, linear, you go from here to here. That's linear, straightforward. It's straight line, that is linear. Now, it is a one-way transmission. I am the sender, you are the receiver, and it's a linear, very, very linear model. And there is a very standard delivery system. I talk to you. Okay. So, this is one way of communication. Now, what are the models that have used or promoted or endorsed one way communication? The classical model, or the first model that any student in the world study about communication, is Aristotle model, which was like 300 BC. Second model is Shannon and Weaver model, and third model is Lasswell model. Now, what these models talk about? Now, Aristotle says that Aristotle model, when you read, I mean, I'm just giving you a hint. You can read at your own, which is like really good. Aristotle, for him, speaker is the most important thing. So it starts that because he himself was the speaker, and audience was there, but for Aristotle, speaker is the most important element. And he says, but very one particular point which is very unique about Aristotle model of communication is called context. Some call it situation. You will have different words in. So if there are 5 stages, context is in the middle of the equation. This is something which makes Aristotle model of communication so relevant even today. That is what Aristotle is remembered for. You will have sender, receiver, one way, two way, or circular. Everything is absolutely fine. But what makes Aristotle model of communication a unique model of communication, which is relevant even today, is this particular, the third point. I mean, if I can take a separate lecture on it, then you will understand what I'm saying. It is the third part. It is in the middle of the the hierarchy. Context makes the difference. When you have this sort of a conversation, oh, why did you say it? No, I did not mean it. Or when you say something bad also, by the way, but the context is something which has been taken care of, it goes like a feather. And so Aristotle talks about context, gives one of the most important, he says that context is as relevant as a speaker or as the audience. Now, Shannon and Weaver model, if you have like, this is Shannon and Weaver model that you can see on your screen. So, I was talking about it, that there is a sender, he encodes the message, channel is there, then the message is decoded, and then you receive the message. Then you have Laswell model, and very interestingly, who says what to whom, with what effect, that is Laswell model. And interestingly, what makes it so linear, there is no feedback mechanism. And if there is no feedback mechanism, it is only one way of communication. Now, let us talk about the interactive model, which is anyway two-way exchange with feedback loop. Both sender and receiver share responsibility for communication effectiveness. Now, Osgood Sheshram model or Sheshram model precisely, or Weasley Macklin model. Now, Osgood and Sheshram model, when you go and study about this model, what makes this model unique is that sender is also the receiver and receiver is also the sender, and sender is also encoding, sending, decoding, and receiver is also receiving, encoding, decoding, and then sending the message. So, there are, like, if you go, so there will be two circles, and then those two circles will be connected. Now, Weasley Macklin model, what they did, actually they interestingly added few more things, but out of all these things, a very interesting phenomena, that was that feedback was incorporated. So, we have like, and in transactional model, you have not only shared field of experience, so linear was that you have, like, suppose I say it, you listen, and then in transaction, in second form, it was that you are also a sender, I am also a sender, you are also a receiver, I am also a receiver. And in this transactional model, you simultaneously sending and receiving, and participants are both sender and receiver. And what makes it different, that the meaning is co-created. Thank you very much.